Chapter 1411. Ethan smiled in resignation. My dear boy, you should call me Dad. Zach's eyes widened in surprise. Can I really? What if Mom finds out? Don't worry. Your mother asked me to pick you up. She's preparing a feast for us on the island. Alicia tugged at his sleeve. Dad, good girl. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. Complicated emotions bubbled up within him as he looked at his children, who didn't grow up by his side. He crouched down and picked Willow up. This was the daughter he felt most pain for. We'll be together as a family from now on. We'll never be apart anymore. That's great, Zach exclaimed as he skipped around. He was very cheerful and lively. He even introduced his school to Ethan like a little chatterbox. Ethan listened to him patiently and would provide him with feedback occasionally. Dad, I heard you were good with guns. When will you show me? I'll take you to the shooting range when we're back in Aldenvine. I'll teach you whatever you wanna learn. Ethan was very lax with Zach. Connor was already the heir to the Miller household. The other kids would be free to do whatever they wanted. He wouldn't interfere too much. Oh, right, Dad. I heard we have an elder brother, right? Alicia also had a lot of questions. Even if they were apart most of the time, their father-daughter bond still drew them close to each other. Yeah, it's almost time for Connor's 9-year-old birthday. Connor must be a very mature and stoic person, unlike how goofy Zach is. He's always making a fool of himself. Zach nudged Alicia lightly. Hey, why aren't you on my side? Twins should stand up for each other. Alicia stuck her tongue out at her. Connor is the same as us. We all have the same parents. He has it worse than us. At least we get to be with Mom. I heard that he has a lot of responsibilities. Zach and Alicia had been very lively since they were young. On the other hand, Willow had always been quiet. She hugged Ethan's neck tightly while she listened to Alicia and Zach fooling around. She didn't move when Ethan carried her into the car. Ethan didn't let her go even when they were in the car. She just stayed in his arms quietly. Of all their children, Connor resembled Ethan the most, while Willow took after Olivia. Zach and Alicia were the opposite. Zach was like Olivia, while Alicia was like Ethan. All four of the children were special in their own way. None of them were the same. They were all very happy to be together. Zach suggested, why don't we prepare a birthday surprise for Connor? He felt terrible for Connor. Other than when he was very young, he had not celebrated Connor's birthday for a long time. The two kids kept talking during the trip. They were filled with energy. Willow remained in Ethan's arms and slept for a few hours. After a long while, they finally arrived at the island. Zach and Alicia were running in the front. They were shouting, Mom, we're here. They opened the door, but Olivia was nowhere to be seen. There was a nice smell coming from the pot. The cake in the oven was also ready. There were still unpeeled potatoes and uncooked beef in the kitchen. Dad, where is Mom? Zach asked as he looked around the villa. Chapter 1412. Ethan put Willow down. Is she not in the kitchen? Olivia had been preparing for the feast since the night before. The children had differing taste buds. It would take some time to prepare different dishes. She's not there. Alicia came from upstairs. She isn't up there either. Willow peered through the window to look at the yard. Olivia wasn't there, either. She gestured with her hands. Ethan thought it was weird. He went to check the kitchen. The oven's timer was up. It was beeping repeatedly. He opened the oven to take the cake out. There was still an unbaked cake and some fruit and cream on the side. Olivia needed the whole day to finish cooking. It was obvious that she stopped halfway. This was the family's reunion. She wouldn't just give up for no reason. He took his phone out to give Olivia a call. Her phone rang, but it was on the kitchen table. Her phone was in the house, but she was gone. Willow picked up a potato by the door. It was only half peeled. She pointed at the place where she picked it up. It was just a couple of steps from the door. It meant that someone came to the house after Ethan left. Olivia went to open the door with the potato in her hand. The visitor might have taken her away. The house was still tidy. There were no signs of a struggle. It was someone she knew. If she put up a fight, there would be signs unless she left willingly. Then, the question would be why she didn't take her phone with her. She didn't even leave Ethan a message. This trip was a complete secret. Ethan only brought Kelvin along, who went to pick up the kids with him. No one expected anything to happen during this trip. He quickly got someone to retrieve the security footage. Kelvin said, ashamed, "Mr. Miller, bad news. All the security cameras in the area were hacked. Mrs. Miller was probably kidnapped." Zach and Alicia started to panic. They missed Olivia so much and finally got the chance to meet her. How could this happen? The cameras were hacked. "Dad, I might be able to recover the footage," said Alicia. From a young age, she liked to mess around with computers. Then, Olivia hired a teacher to teach Alicia programming. She got into Angus Academy because of her programming skills. Simply put, everyone in the school had something they were good at. After the entrance exams, the teachers of the school would put the students into different classes based on their skills. The teacher she had in school was one of the best hackers in the world. Ethan was surprised. Alicia was still asking about what type of candy he liked a while ago, swaying her legs innocently. Sure, Ethan didn't doubt his daughter at all. Alicia took a laptop out of her pink backpack. She began to type with incredible speed on the keyboard. The codes flashing on the screen were very complex. Kelvin was stunned to see what she was doing. "Miss Alicia is so incredible." Ethan looked outside the window. Willow was out there, standing under a tree. There was a tiny flute-like object hanging from her neck. The material looked like it was either bone or opal. It was slightly bigger than a whistle, but it was smaller than a regular flute. The sounds it made were also weird. A bird soon landed next to her. More birds gathered as she threw some breadcrumbs on the ground. People who had seen her wouldn't think she was just feeding the birds. After a while, Willow walked over and gestured to Ethan. She told him through hand signs that Olivia had been taken by a man. "What kind of man?" Willow pointed to the bird perched on the golden-colored road sign. "Golden," Alicia yelled. "Dad, I found the footage. Mr. Rivera took Mom." The video was paused, showing a blonde-haired man. "Mr. Rivera, is that one of Mom's suitors?" Ethan couldn't help but think about it that way when he saw how handsome Louis was. Zach shook his head. "No, he's Mom's teacher. But he's weird. He's known as the Mad Doctor but loves Mom. It's not the kind of love Dad has for Mom. It's like a scientist's love for a test subject." A test subject? A hint of unease flashed in Ethan's mind. Chapter 1413. Louis was one of the people who helped to cure Olivia. Back when she cut all ties and ran off, she was on the brink of death. It was then that Colin brought her to Louis. Louis was one of the best doctors in the world. He wasn't just a medical researcher. He was a medical genius who pushed boundaries. He was a mad doctor. The only thing he cared about was the results, not the process. The reason Louis helped Olivia wasn't because of how sad her life was. It was because she was his test subject. There was only one way Colin could have cured her, which was by giving her an abortion before the treatment. Louis was different. He was interested from the start. A treatment that didn't affect the baby in the womb. Olivia was the first subject ever to have such conditions. Louis agreed to offer treatment right away. It was rare to get such a good test subject. It was his suggestion to turn Olivia into an herb-imbued person. The treatment also altered the baby in her womb. It was the best way to ensure the baby's survival. But he couldn't say for sure what would happen to the baby after the treatment. Back then, Olivia didn't have a choice. She could only do as Louis said for her and Willow's sake. She even had to eat herbs for all the meals of the day. Since she was a medical student, she also studied under Louis while receiving treatment. Naturally, she didn't use her real name. She named herself Elise and wore a mask. Louis didn't mind when he found out. He didn't care about looks. All humans were equal to him. The so-called beauty and ugliness were just differences in bone structure. Everything was going well. He helped Olivia save the baby and cleared out the cancer cells in her. Then, she became his most successful test subject. He wanted to give her upgrades and makeovers. When Olivia saw the plans he had in store, she ran away while she was still pregnant. She hid in the village and never came back out. She didn't expect him to find her again. Elise, do you have any idea how long I looked for you? Olivia smiled wryly. In order to find her, he even dug up her true identity. It seemed like he really liked her as a test subject. The enhancements she made to Marina's legs were something she learned from Louis. But she only learned about the basics and was already regarded as a very good doctor. Louis would be furious if he found out. Those were just the bottom of the barrel. His biggest dream was to create a cyborg. Olivia was the only person who survived the treatment to become an herb-imbued person. Before meeting Olivia, Louis used a lot of death row inmates for his experiments. There were men and women of all ages. It was a risky treatment. Not everyone survived. Death was inevitable. The quickest died in 7 days. The slowest took 3 months. She passed the first stage of Louis's plan. She became an herb-imbued person. Louis altered his own body for decades. He looked like he was in his 30s but was actually in his 60s. He could only become an incomplete cyborg because he wasn't herb-imbued. It was a great regret of his. That was why he placed all his hopes in Olivia. That was also why Olivia didn't try to escape when she saw him. He may look human, but he has machinery all over his body. There were over a dozen weapons in him. His defense system would immobilize her the moment she tried to resist. Olivia gulped. She said cautiously, Mr. Rivera. Chapter 1414. Compared to her reunion with Louis, Olivia was more curious about how he found her. She used an alias when they met. He only cared about his research and didn't care about it even though he knew she was using a fake identity. If he wanted to, he would have found her long ago. He wouldn't have taken so long to find her. There could only be one reason. She had just revealed her true identity not long ago, and he came knocking on her door. Her original plan was to attract the person who tried to kill her years before to come out of hiding again. That way, she could get closer to finding out who the mastermind was. She didn't expect Louis to show up at her door before the assassins. Someone had exposed her true identity to Louis. That would mean the person who wanted her dead would be related to the poison hive. Olivia joined the poison hive because she wanted to find this person. But Louis scared her into hiding in the village. She had no choice but to drop that plan. Louis seemed happy. He didn't seem to mind her escape. After all, he was just happy that his test subject was still alive and kicking. Mr. Rivera, about what happened. Louis replied, I know you did it for the baby. I understand. I don't blame you. He glossed over it casually. Olivia was not going to believe he put it behind her. She knew how vicious Louis could be. His viciousness was different from the others. Some people would be vicious for power, some for status. Only he would do it for science. But he was too extreme. His research was more important than anything else. Money, life, or whatever, were less important than his research. Olivia had seen him do experiments before. His projects included pregnant women and children. She would feel devastated when she met the gaze of the test subjects. It was because she couldn't save any of them. They all ingested the same prescription as she did. Unless they also managed to survive the process, only death awaited them. Louis wouldn't even let the corpses go to waste. He would dissect them and make them into samples for analysis. In the initial stages of her pregnancy, Olivia was surrounded by these test subjects. She was his student and his assistant. The reason why she got so good at medicine, especially in the heart surgery field, was because she had the mad doctor as her mentor. She used her skills to save lives, while he used his for research. A simple show of her skills was enough to let her peers regard her as one of the best doctors ever. But Louis reigned supreme in the medical fields unknown to the world. He was the cyborg doctor that was better than any human doctor. His arms were already modified into mechanical ones. In his words, not even the best doctors could maintain peak conditions all the time. Emotions, age, sleep deprivation, and other external issues would be able to impact a doctor's effectiveness. Machines were different. As long as a machine was at the operating table, there would never be a mistake. Machines wouldn't even tire after long hours of operation. A machine would be more efficient than a human at providing treatment. Olivia was impressed by his obsession with research, but she couldn't condone his reckless disregard for human life. But at least their reunion wasn't as violent as she had thought it would be. Chapter 1415. In Olivia's eyes, Louis was just a purely insane researcher. He didn't care for much else. That was why she was very straightforward with her questions. Who? No one told me. Then how did you find me? Someone sent me an anonymous email. They told me that you were Elise, so I came over. Olivia clenched her fists. It was as she thought. She knew the mastermind plotting her death wouldn't let her go so easily. She didn't expect the person to get Louis involved. That would mean that the person knew about Louis's plan, and she was Louis's test subject. The person wanted to kill her with Louis's hand. Olivia had seen too many of Louis's articles and notes about his transformation experiments. If the chances of surviving the process of becoming an herb-imbued person were 1 in 10,000, the cyborg treatment would be countless times riskier. No one would risk their life on a procedure without any prior success. Besides, Olivia wasn't interested in such a crazy idea. In her opinion, weaknesses and emotions were precisely the things that set humans apart from machines. Where are you bringing me, Mr. Rivera? Back to the lab. Olivia looked at the sky outside. The sun shone on the sea. It reflected off the waters and painted a pretty picture. It looked very peaceful. She wondered if Ethan had already met the children at school. She hadn't seen her children in a long time. Did they grow taller? Were they happy to see the father they had been dreaming of? Even if she couldn't see it, she could imagine what the reunion would look like. The beef and potato stew that Willow and Zack liked wasn't finished yet. The cakes were also only halfway finished. The feast she had painstakingly planned for wasn't finished yet. She even gave Zack a call the night before. He was probably upset that he didn't get to eat the dinner she prepared. Ethan would probably be nervous, too. Louis didn't notice the disappointment in Olivia's eyes. He said happily, "My second lab has just been built. Elise, you're the most talented doctor I've ever met. You should just do research with me from now on. I'll make you the best doctor in the world." Olivia could feel her head throbbing. She had met the best mentor she would ever find. The man was also willing to train her to be the best. But her heart wasn't in it. She just wanted her life back. "But, Mr. Rivera, I don't want to." She just wanted to go back to her children and do the things she liked. The only obsession she had was to get revenge. "You don't want to." Louis activated the self-driving mode and released the steering wheel. He looked at Olivia with a stern expression. "And why is that? Do you know what countless kings of old coveted? How many people from the past to the present have been pursuing immortality? I know you're kind. You've donated to a lot of kids, helped refugees rebuild their homes, and treated patients for free. If my vision is realized, you and I will be the kings of the world." Chapter 1416. This vision had been in Louis's head for decades. Olivia didn't think she would be able to change his mind so easily. The truth was that everyone had their own dreams and their ways of life. She wasn't a judge, so, she didn't have the right to decide if other people were making the right decisions. Besides, she was the one who betrayed Louis's trust and ran out on him first. She didn't dare to anger him because he was too big of a threat. She could only go along with him and improvise. Louis was still very hopeful of her future. So, she could only soften her attitude. "I know you mean well, Mr. Rivera. But your vision isn't so easy to realize." "Of course, I know that. Refining this cyborg technology would take decades. Creating a new world order would take hundreds of years. I don't have that long to live, but you're different. You've already herb-imbued. You've succeeded. You can realize my dream. If I were to die, you have to continue my experiments. You need a lot of time and an invulnerable body. You have to become a cyborg." Olivia could only sigh when she met with his obsessive and stubborn gaze. Louis brought her to another island. It was different from the one in the North Pole. The weather was always good here. And the location was nice. She would be in a good mood if not for what was about to happen. Louis didn't stop talking for the entire journey to the island. He talked about how much progress he made in the past 3 years. Louis was a man of few words. He was especially cold before strangers. But he was different with Olivia. He treated her like his protégé and his muse. She was the person who knew him best. Olivia was distracted. She was only thinking about her children. The warm wind blew on her face and made her feel stuffy. I'll perform a full physical checkup on you later. I need to know the current condition of your body. Olivia knew nothing would happen to her yet. Louis wouldn't operate on her immediately. She was safe, but all she was thinking about was celebrating the new year with her children. She finally got the chance to reunite with her children. Her sad sighs and sad demeanor were in stark contrast to how happy and cheerful Louis was. He was a man in his 60s but was as happy as a little boy on Christmas. Other than you, I've managed to create another herb-imbued person. He's the one who has survived for the longest. Today is the last day of the 6-month period. The other herb-imbued people other than Olivia lasted 3 months at the most. 6 months was a very long time in comparison. And he's the same as you. He also came to me voluntarily. Olivia didn't understand. She didn't have a choice back then. Was he out of options, too? I guess. I was the only one who could have saved him. He was on the verge of death. It seemed like there were always going to be people at the end of their rope. Even though she had spent hundreds of millions for charity, she couldn't save everyone in the world. Olivia knew that half of Toxic Hive's money went to Louis's lab. He had the most cutting-edge equipment here. As compensation, he would give some of the trinkets that he invented. These trinkets involved drugs that weren't circulating on the market. The rich people would spend a lot of money to get them. These drugs were like the ones that Otto had taken before. It would quickly help its user recover, but their body would get worse if they stopped taking the drugs. The miracle drug that everyone coveted was just trash to Louis. It's nothing compared to his plan to transform people into cyborgs. Olivia was about to go for the checkup when she saw a familiar silhouette. Mr. Rivera, is he the new herb-imbued person you were talking about? Chapter 1417. Louis was an unfeeling man with lots of rules. Other than his assistant, almost no one could roam freely in his lab. So, Olivia guessed that the man was the herb-imbued person who underwent his procedure. That silhouette was very familiar to her. It was a person who had helped her in the past. She had not met him in years. He turned around, and a frail but handsome face appeared before Olivia. Avery also didn't expect to meet Olivia again under these circumstances. He was sad for quite some time when he received news that Olivia was dead. He had only recently heard that Olivia was still alive, but he hadn't expected to meet her again so soon. Why are you here, Olivia? It's been a long time, Mr. Fordham. Olivia could guess why he was there. He had a kidney condition. She was prepared to give him her kidney 8 years ago. Back then, Ethan stopped the surgery. She had heard news about him over the years. Ethan said Avery had completed the kidney transplant. Something had to have gone very wrong. He wouldn't be here otherwise. It's nice to see that you're still alive and well. The indifference and viciousness in his eyes had faded. He looked very gentle. Olivia felt warm. It's nice to see you, too. Louis didn't really care that they used to know each other. Elise, I'm ready to give you that checkup. Okay. She turned to look at Avery again. Mr. Fordham, we'll talk again later. Watching the two of them leave, Avery had already guessed that Olivia was the talented student Louis was talking about, his ultimate creation. Avery was different from Olivia. He only decided to become an herb-imbued person due to his condition. He learned bits and pieces of Louis's plan from the 6 months of treatment. But he didn't expect Elise, whom Louis was always talking about, to be Olivia. No one would go through with Louis's procedure to become a cyborg if they had a choice. That was probably why Olivia ran away. A hint of worry flashed in Avery's eyes when he saw that Olivia was back. Olivia cooperated with Louis's various examinations. She had a heavy heart as she lay on the examination table. The first time she sought him out was because she wanted to live. But humans are greedy. Once her life was saved, she wanted her family and more. She had so many things she had yet to do. She didn't want to be stuck in a lab forever. Back then, she decided to practice medicine to save more lives. She didn't want to dissect corpses and find out why she failed after experiments. But she didn't have a choice. If she didn't go through with Louis's treatment, she couldn't have given birth to Willow at the village. Louis was the one who saved her and Willow. Moreover, she made him a promise. The noises from the machines sounded in her ears. A detailed inspection from head to toe was performed. Some of her blood was taken for even more examinations. Louis planned to examine the results personally. Olivia exited the room, holding her arm. As soon as she got out, she was met with Avery's concerned gaze. "Olivia, are you okay?" Olivia smiled. "It's just an examination. I'm okay. Can we talk?" "Sure." There weren't any boats on the island. Louis wasn't afraid that she would escape. Besides, he had a lot of robots on hand. He could find her again anytime he wanted. Avery and Olivia sat on chairs on the beach. Olivia spoke up first. "Mr. Fordham, is your kidney okay?" Chapter 1418. Avery told Olivia all he had been through all these years. Back then, his kidney condition was already very serious, but he was unable to find a suitable donor. He was on the brink of death a few times. Then, he chanced upon a suitable kidney and had the transplant. But it didn't last. His body started to reject the kidney. His life hadn't been easy. He had been hanging by a thread and had no option but to seek out Louis. His relationship with Louis was purely transactional. He wasn't like Olivia, who was Louis's student. "Mr. Fordham, can I take your pulse real quick?" "Sure, go ahead." Avery looked at Olivia's steadfast gaze. She was no longer the sickly young woman of the past. She had already grown into a magnificent person. She must be very skilled to earn Louis's approval. He thought about how desperate she was back then. She told him she didn't have a future anymore and wanted to give him her kidney. Avery asked her before what she wanted to do if she survived. She said she liked studying medicine but made the wrong choice. If she could, she wanted to join Peace's embrace. She had heard that there were a lot of exceptional doctors in the organization, and she wanted to learn from them. In the end, she didn't get to join but still managed to become an incredible doctor. Olivia felt Avery's pulse and frowned. Although he managed to survive 6 months, his acclimation to the procedure wasn't as smooth as hers. That was why his condition wasn't good. He was still barely hanging on. "Mr. Fordham, you." Avery saw how hesitant she was. He smiled gently and patted her on the head. He was like a kind elder brother without a hint of lust in his eyes. "I know how I am doing. I'm just happy to see you again. Also, I'm happy to see how much you've grown. You're no longer the crybaby you used to be." The two of them didn't really know each other that well, but the joy in his eyes was apparent. He was like an uncle that had seen her grow up. He looked genuinely proud of her. Olivia felt like there was a lump in her throat. She felt a little uneasy when she met his gaze. But she didn't understand why she would have such complicated emotions. Maybe it was just her compassion for a patient. He did help her out before. "Don't overthink it, Olivia. I just feel like you look a little like my sister. We even share the same last name. I feel like our meeting was fated." Avery had 2 sisters. One died overseas, and Olivia had the pleasure of meeting the other. She was an elegant young lady. The two of them did share some similarities. "Yeah, I know. I just feel guilty. If only I had given you my kidney, you would've." "Please don't think of it like that. This is just how it's meant to be." Avery withdrew his hand. He looked relieved. "After being ravaged by an illness for so long, I've thought things through. I'm not ready to let go of life even though this world is imperfect. I still have my family. Even if I have to fight for every breath I take, I still want to live for one more day, one more hour, or even one more second. It's a good thing you didn't give me your kidney. Or else you wouldn't have survived the procedure." Avery was such a nice person, but it seemed like misfortune loved the company of those in distress. Olivia felt horrible. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Mr. Rivera is a very good doctor. You've already lasted longer than anyone else. He might be able to save your life." Chapter 1419. Complicated feelings bubbled up within Olivia when she looked at Avery. She felt close to him since the first time they met. Back then, she had been ravaged by her illness, but she got better. Avery was still struggling with his illness. Olivia felt an inexplicable sadness for him. His illness can't be cured with surgery. He also needed a new kidney. He had done surgery before, but the effects were underwhelming. Since even Olivia couldn't cure him, Louis was his only hope. Avery was calm. He had already come to terms with his situation. I hope so. Mr. Fordham, do you have a phone on you? I left in a hurry and didn't bring my phone. I want to call my family. Avery handed her his phone. Here, thanks. Meanwhile, Ethan had just realized that Olivia had been taken by Louis. He was looking everywhere for leads on him. Then, his phone rang. He was stunned when he looked at the caller ID. It was a call from Avery. The two of them barely knew each other and hadn't been in contact for years. There weren't any projects they were working on together. Why would he be calling? A familiar voice came from over the phone. It's me. Ethan was finally able to calm down. Liv, is that you? Are you okay? Did Louis? No, he's my mentor. He wouldn't hurt me. Olivia didn't want him to worry. Nor did she want him to make Louis his enemy. Louis was unhinged, but he was a great medical genius. Other than his cyborg transformation plan, he came up with many cures and saved many lives. If Ethan destroyed Louis and his lab, it would also destroy the hope of countless patients. Also, Louis was a master of machinery. There were a lot of robots in his base. Even if Ethan managed to save her, it would be at a hefty price. Olivia wanted to handle this situation herself, so she didn't tell him the truth. Why did you leave without saying anything? Do you have any idea how worried I was? I'm sorry. Mr. Rivera had an urgent project he needed my help with. Olivia tried her best to sound natural. Ethan asked suspiciously, why would you be with Avery? He's here for treatment. I just happened to meet him, so I used his phone to call you. I left in a hurry. Are the kids all right? They're fine, but they're worried about you. When will you be back? Or should I go pick you up? No need. We're preparing for an important project. It might take some time. Liv, you promised we'll celebrate New Year together. Olivia felt her chest tighten. She wanted to do it, too. But things were already out of her control. Yeah, I'll try to get back as soon as possible. You should take the kids home first. Ethan felt like something was wrong, but from what he saw in the security footage, Olivia left of her own accord. Even as they were talking on the phone, he heard nothing wrong with her voice. Was he just overthinking it? All right, wait, give the phone to the kids. I want to hear their voices. After a while, Zach said, Mom, are you okay? I miss you. I'm fine. I'm sorry, dear. The feast I promised you has to be delayed. Alicia spoke up, too. Mom, when are you coming back? I'll have to be away for some more time. You'll have to live with Dad for now. He'll take good care of all of you. But I miss you, Mom. I thought I would be able to see you when we got back. Alicia sounded disappointed. Olivia smiled in resignation. I'm so sorry, dear. I'll try to get back as soon as I can. Okay, we'll wait to celebrate the new year with you. Then, the phone was put on speakerphone. A clear ringing sound came from the phone. Olivia knew that it came from Willow. Okay, chapter 1420. After hanging up, Olivia looked dejected. She didn't know when she would be able to go back to her children. She handed the phone back to Avery. Thanks, Mr. Fordham. Avery saw the sadness in Olivia's eyes. Olivia, you. He was about to ask a question when Louis yelled excitedly, perfect. This is perfection. There was a thick stack that was Olivia's physical examination report. You've reached the optimal state. It has only been 3 years. You've recovered better than I expected. You've completely acclimated to all the herbs in your system. All of the herbs had different effects. A lot of the test subjects weren't able to last a week while consuming herbs during their pregnancy. Olivia didn't leave in good condition back then. At the moment, her body had already built up a resistance against most of the herbs. Olivia knew it was all because of the medicinal spring in Wendy. After the treatment and years of acclimation, she had become a true herb-imbued person. Elise, you're the chosen one I have been looking for. I can't wait to begin the transformation procedure. Louis's eyes were glowing when he looked at her. He was like a hyena that had eyes on its prey. Where should we start? Louis looked at her from top to bottom. He was very satisfied with his creation. Olivia felt a chill from his gaze. She knew he wouldn't take no for an answer. If she said anything to make him angry, he might decide to use more forceful methods. Then, it would be hard for her to leave. Mr. Rivera, can we delay the procedure for a bit? Delay? Why would we need to delay? Louis asked with a frown. Olivia said gently, because I haven't done all the things I want to do. I haven't found the people that tried to kill me. The procedures won't end so quickly. If my enemy is an old person, they might die before I get to them. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Olivia knew Louis was still human despite his obsession. All humans had emotions. Besides, Olivia knew about his circumstances before he became who he was. He also had a lot of enemies. He would definitely understand how she felt. There were up to 100 projects included in his plan. Rest is required after every few procedures. Then, there was the time needed to recover. The first phase alone would take a few months to a year. It's not something that would be done in days. Mr. Rivera, we don't even know if I'm going to survive the procedure. Even if I survive and get a long life, I'm different from you. Revenge is very important to me. Without my enemy to exact revenge on, what is the point of living? I would rather die. When Louis heard what Olivia said, he grabbed her hand anxiously. You can't die. Who would realize my dream if you were dead? Please just tell me who your enemy is. I'll kill him for you. Olivia relaxed and sighed. She made the right call. Louis wasn't the type of man she could just openly defy. I'm still investigating, but I have some leads now. Mr. Rivera, can you help me look into who sent you that email? All right, I'll get someone to look into it. You have to be good. Don't even think about dying. Louis ran away in a hurry. Avery witnessed everything. He glanced around and whispered, Olivia, you're not here out of your own accord, are you? Mr. Rivera saved my life. He's very obsessive and a little unhinged. I have too many things I have to do. I can't be as focused as he is, but I can't turn him down. After all, they signed a contract on the day when he saved her life. Then, Louis even taught her about medicine. Olivia was very grateful to him. It was a dead end. She could only delay the inevitable.